Alright, this is a commentary on a compilation of endgames played on judochess.com. I'll be elaborating more on some key concepts of the real-time endgame. Alright, we'll start off with a very simple checkmate. It's a beginner's level checkmate. The white and green team have a winning material advantage. Black's pawns are traveling toward the right, so they're both obstructed by green's pieces. The white king has a very simple mating maneuver where it'll always be defended by the green pieces. So if the black king captures the white king, then the green king can capture back and win the game for the team. Alright, this is a more intermediate level endgame. With two kings against a king and bishop, the side with the two kings has a big enough material advantage to win 99% of the time. There's always going to be a slight chance that the losing side could get lucky. Here I'll link to another commentary on an endgame that was king rook versus king bishop, which is a draw 99% of the time. In a lot of these endgames involving short-range attacks, the king's attacking ability is stronger than the rook. As long as the king doesn't have any other material left, it can pretty much be treated like a regular attacking piece, so it's stronger than a rook in this case. The rook is usually stronger in endgames with pawns at different areas of the board. So I guess the imbalances of rook and king are kind of similar to the imbalances of bishop versus knight, where the bishop and rook are better at controlling more squares in long-range battles, and the knight and king are better at quickly picking off enemy pieces in close range. So here the white-green team doesn't have a problem winning this endgame. But if you compare to the linked commentary, you'll see that a rook isn't as strong as a king here. The king's abilities become more comparable to a queen, while the rook's long-range abilities sort of go to waste. There's only about a 1% chance that red could get lucky here. If green or white king attempts to capture too hastily, red king might move at the same time and dodge, taking one of the kings and then taking the next king afterward. So it's better to just wait for the red king to move first and only attempt to capture after so much time has passed without red moving. Replay at normal speed now. Alright, this is a more advanced level endgame. Things always seem to go wrong in these types of endgames. Queen versus connected pawns is a lot different in real-time chess than it is in turn-based, because the pawns can all advance together in real-time chess, and check doesn't gain a tempo in real-time chess, so the queen is weaker in real-time chess than it is in turn-based. In turn-based chess, the queen has no problem against an army of pawns, but in real-time chess, the team with the queen has to really know what they're doing, and not as many positions can be won with the queen. So here, the white-green team has 5 pawns, and red is promoting to an extra queen. So red is up a queen for 5 pawns if you consider the rook to be worth a king. But a disadvantage for the white-green team is that losing a king will lose other material. So that's what happens here. Green trades his king and queen for red's rook and queen, which seems like an even trade, but the fact that green's pawns are going to disappear make it a bad trade. Red didn't defend the queen as safely as he could have, but the white pawn just barely misses the capture, which will leave red up a queen for only 3 pawns instead of 5. Now red has an endgame. He should win 99% if he knows what he's doing. Here, red could try queen takes pawn and king defend, but that would give him only about a 50-50 chance if white is prepared. So red wants to go for a safer winning method. Red should carefully pick off the pawns starting at the base, which should be easy considering that the pawns aren't very close to promotion. Here, white's king will have to move 99%, and then red can capture the base pawn 100%. But for some reason, red just doesn't capture the base pawn and just gives white more time. So here, red still has time to go for the win, but white does a pawn fork, which is normally escapable in real-time chess, but red doesn't move the king and queen quick enough, so he loses the king and loses the game. So now we're going to take a look at a similar endgame involving a queen against connected pawns, where this time the team with the queen still has a pawn left. The black-red team has 5 connected pass pawns headed to the left, and the white-green team has an extra queen and also a pawn which is headed upwards. Since white still has a pawn, white should avoid trading kings with black, who only has a king, but it's good to trade for red's king since red has more material left. It looks like the white-green team should have at least a draw if they capture 3 red pawns and white safely promotes. But if the white-green team is prepared and well coordinated, it looks like they have a good chance of winning since red pawns can be reduced to 2 while they're still more than 2 moves from promotion. But green doesn't seem to capture the pawns as optimally as he could have, and white makes the mistake of trading for black. So green still manages to defend white, but after white and black go off the board, red's pawns are already too advanced for green to do anything about it, so red has a winning endgame after promoting. It seems like the white and green team would have had good winning chances if green had spent the time more wisely. Since a queen is worth less in real-time chess, sometimes a piece and a few pawns is all it takes to beat a queen, and 2 pieces and a few pawns should almost always be enough to beat a queen. But this clip goes to show that even with 3 pieces and an army of pawns, it's still not that simple because the side with the pieces has a lot to keep track of. Minor pieces don't line up in traditional ways, so there's a lot that the winning side has to think about, while the losing side only has 2 forces to keep track of, and simply looking for chances to steal material by finding breakthrough points. It looks like black has everything well defended, but it gives green the chance for a weak timing attack. Since the timing attack would have a low success rate, green instead anticipates the movements of black's knights and gets really lucky here. Exploiting the split-second vulnerability of black's pawn, and black ends up losing both of his knights where he didn't have to. Black is still winning here with an extra bishop and 2 pawns. If black's queen can move to prevent green's pieces from mating, then black should have a winning material advantage. But black's queen never moves off its promotion square, and green gets a lucky checkmate. Rather than immediately going for the king, green takes the queen, which could have been defended by the bishop, but green wins anyway. That was a pretty lucky game for green. So the following clip is the only one that's not from Judo Chess. It's from the old Tempest Chess server, but it fits the themes we've been looking at, so I'll include it here. Queen and bishop against a rook, bishop, and 4 pawns should be a draw in turn-based chess, but in real-time chess, the rook and 4 pawns are superior to the queen, so the queen should lose. The value of the queen in real-time chess is more comparable to about a rook plus 1 or 2 pawns rather than a rook and 4 pawns. So this endgame is totally winning for green, and pawns are worth more in the endgame. There's just a few places where green allowed blue a chance to get lucky with a sweep or king throw, but other than that, green played pretty carefully, and green will have an easy time once the pawns promote. The rook is useful in keeping blue's king out of the game, but green gave the king a chance to cross over, which would have caused green to have to reconstruct his formation, but blue's king moves back, and then it's just an easy win for green again. No sweep for the bishop, so there shouldn't be any problems at this point. Next, we'll see a similar endgame involving a queen against a rook and 4 pawns, but this time the side with the pawns isn't as well prepared for the endgame and doesn't immediately realize what to do with the rook. So here, red can safeguard the rook with a pawn while creating a barrier that keeps white's king out, and then red can calmly promote the most advanced pawn, while white will have to resort to some cheap attempts to swindle. But here, red doesn't coordinate the rook well with the pawns, and ends up letting white's pieces in. Red misses a chance to capture white's king, and then loses the game. Red just wasn't prepared for the endgame and lost out of confusion. In this next clip, the queen is against a rook and only 1 pawn. So it might seem like a double-edged endgame with near equal chances, but since pawns are stronger in the endgame, and queen versus rook is generally a draw in real-time chess since forks and pins don't work, even if the white-green team can cheaply win the pawn, there's still no guaranteed win, so you can't really blame the red-black team for playing for the draw. This type of imbalance would only favor the queen if it was closer to the opening phase of the game, where the pawn wouldn't be dangerous yet. Also, red's king has a hard time getting into the game because of the rook, so the white-green team is the one playing for the win. If red's king was more strongly placed, then it would be more of a dead draw. Black has an opportunity to trade the queen for the rook, and the pawn just barely makes the capture even though the queen had time to dodge. So now the position is a draw. Unless the white-green team wants to risk losing, there's ideas of using the pawn's capturing ability to support the king of the opposite color on the same team, but there's a chance that the red-black team could make simultaneous captures, so there would be about a 50-50 chance in that case. This is a funny quadruple king endgame where only one of the defensive kings is optimally placed. So this is a draw, but if black's king was beside red's instead of blocking the pawn, then the green-white team would have a forced promotion, kind of similar to if it was just one king against one king. So here the white-green team can't do anything without risking losing. White retreats, possibly trying to swap places with green's king to try a cheap winning tactic later. Red's king moves to directly obstruct the pawn at the same time green's king moves to where white's used to be. So now anything can happen here, it just depends on who attempts what. Red gets the capture first, and white recaptures at about the same time black replaces red. So oftentimes in this situation, the kings will switch places with each other until one of them retreats or gets captured. But here, white simply retreats, and black doesn't move at all. Maybe he misclicked, so the game ends in a draw, but maybe white could have won if he'd attempted capture. So the material point values regarding pawns and minor pieces are pretty similar to turn-based chess, because they don't have a lot of tactical value that goes to waste. But pawns are still a little more valuable since quantity generally beats quality in real-time chess. Here, green has 3 pawns for the bishop, which would be a draw in turn-based chess, but here green can advance his king and pawns together for quicker progress, so the bishop can't defend this by force. Green's pawns would have had to be further back in order for black to force a draw, so here green can win by force by simply promoting on the dark square and not capturing the bishop, but green's pawn instead captures the bishop, allowing black to recapture, and green's king is afraid to defend, so this might have been a misclick, or it could have been an instinctive reflex, because it's usually good to capture a minor piece with a pawn, but obviously it was better to simply promote the pawn without capturing the bishop, because now green has doubled pawns. There's no way to force a win because black's king can simply idle in front of the doubled pawns. Green would need a better pawn structure to exploit his material advantage, or an extra minor piece. Without the extra pair of rook's pawns on the board, an extra bishop wouldn't even be enough for green to win. But here, green can capture black's last pawn and advance the remaining pawn. But green doesn't have anything else to defend the doubled pawn, so it's still a draw. Black's king just captures both of the doubled pawns and can then idle in front of green's last healthy pawn, so there's no forced win.